Hello everyone. We are live again on YouTube and LinkedIn, bringing you yet another exciting episode of the Top Innovator series. This is where we dive into proven leadership ideas, game-changing strategies, and the brilliant minds behind them. My name is Joseph Martens, I'm your host, and I'm excited to introduce today's guest. With us today is Rebecca Sutter. Rebecca is the CTO of ASE, the National Institute of Automotive Service Excellence. Before that, she held other tech executive positions, including being the CIO and a VP of Information Services at various other organizations. And today, Rebecca is with us. Rebecca, it's a pleasure to have you in our conversation here.
It's a pleasure to meet you and see you today, Joseph, and thank you for inviting me to join you.
Excellent. Rebecca, you have an awesome leadership journey with a lot of highlights in your trajectory. When you reflect on your journey, I'd be curious to know, what do you think are some of the ingredients of your success? What got you to where you are in terms of your leadership journey?
Well, I don't think I ever set out to be a leader, at least at the outset. I started my career as a software programmer for the U.S. Navy at the Naval Research Lab in the 80s. And I was interning there, and I was pursuing a computer science degree at University of Maryland. And I wasn't certain if it was going to be my career path or not. But I did enjoy solving problems. I was very, very fortunate to start IT at that point. It was the beginning of a lot of exciting things. It was the beginning of Unix. It was the beginning of the internet. It was the beginning of massively parallel systems, which later became things like Google, cloud computing. All of that saw its genesis at that time and that point. And I had an opportunity to witness it and participate in it from the outset, which really laid the groundwork for what's become a pretty lengthy career, now over 40 years, which I'm sad to say dates me quite a bit. But the thing about my leadership journey is that while it started with a very narrow technical focus, as it's progressed, it's been mostly about understanding how the world touches tech and how I can help tech work with the world. And from the beginning, we started with very narrow focus. You would write applications to solve particular tasks. They would run on an individual machine. And then when the ARPANET, which was the predecessor of the internet, became involved, it was about getting machines to collaborate and exchange information. But it still was machine to machine, fundamentally.
Yep.
And then with the advent of the internet in the 90s, I actually had an opportunity to build one of the very first web servers running on one of the very earliest versions of Linux for the organization I worked for at the time, National League of Cities. And NLC.org has their domain because I registered it in 1991. So I left them a great value. I think 3-letter domain name is very rare.
Super rare, right?
Super rare. And but I mean, it was part of my growth trajectory, both understanding technology, but also figuring out ways to help organizations embrace technology. And that at first occupied a tremendous, at that point in time, IT was still needed to be proved. And the use of computers in the work environment was still not, I mean, it was a necessary evil, but it was considered something like an accounting function, or it wasn't considered for widespread use in work. And so I had a hand at introducing the organizations to technology, and then also understanding how to do real work with technology. And so I was kind of an ambassador for technology, if you will, and that forced me to grow. So I went back and got a business degree, so I could much more speak the language of business to business people, and act as that translator between the technical side of things and the business side of things. At the same time, I was also skilling up continuously, and that's one of the downsides of being in IT, is you constantly are skilling up. There's no rest for wicked IT leaders. You have to constantly be learning new things.
Let me interrupt you there, Rebecca. This is fascinating.
Sure.
Why is it a downside of being an IT leader? It sounds to me like that's great, right? Growth, skilling up is built into the job description almost.
Well, it's a double-edged sword. You can't rest on your laurels. You're constantly having to strive. It's like a hamster wheel, if you will. in the sense that, the technology you knew today is going to transmogrify, Calvin and Hobbes' term, into something else down the road. And it's interesting, I've noted a pattern is that technologies don't ever really go away. They just keep getting recycled and repackaged and extended. So, like a lot of the concepts of the World Wide Web are really based on terminals. So if you knew terminals in the 70s and the 80s, you had a fundamental understanding of how a web browser works.
Right.
And so, and that's the same with a lot of technology. It's been additive. And so understanding those underpinnings, like knowing the TCP/IP stack, for instance, having to learn that early in my career because I had to practically implement an IP stack, has helped me later down the road when understanding why things don't work or why things are the way they are. What are the limitations of a particular technology? Which is my role has evolved. I've become more of a mentor and a leader and an architect and less of a hands-on day-to-day technologist, particularly in my most recent role. My prior roles, I was doing a lot of coding, but nowadays it's a luxury I don't have time for. And so what I was saying is that there's just always too much to learn as an IT person. To evolve, you not only have to stay conversant with the technology, be able to walk the walk, you also have to skill up in terms of how you work with people, how you work with business. And so that technology leader is constantly being torn between all sorts of different areas that they have to stay up with.
Talk to me about this mentor leadership piece and the skilling up there. What was surprising for you when you stepped into your leadership roles? What is something where you thought, I have an idea of how this might go, running a team, leading people, and it turned out to be so different?
To be honest, not a lot of forethought went into things. I've been doing things for 40 years. No, I'm very reflective, and I try to understand what's working and what's not working. And I realized fairly early when I started to step up from an individual contributor to working with a team and managing a team, which happened at various progressive stages in my career, that there was a different dynamic. There was different demands. For instance, when you move up to the team level, it's organizing work. It's keeping people in the loop, communication. There's a lot of challenges around making sure everybody is contributing equally and contributing well. And then there becomes the dynamic of creating those teams, and that requires a whole different set of skill sets. Learning how to balance personality types, balance skill levels, making certain people make certain that people are not being exploited or also not are given opportunities to grow. Another thing I learned early on in my career that served me very well is the high cost of turnover. And IT is famous for churn. People parachute into something, do something, and then leave. So much knowledge goes out the door whenever you lose a person. And it's a lot less expensive in the long run for an organization to cultivate stability in their tech team. And organizations that don't necessarily see the cost, but the cost is very real. And the programmers are notoriously bad at documenting. So much of what they do is in their heads. And even if you mandate it, it's not necessarily going to be useful.
Right.
And so what I've been trying to do as a leader, particularly over the last 20 years, has been learning how to build a team, learning how to build a stable team, learning how to support my people and make them feel like they have the space to be creative without fear, because there's a lot of fear sometimes in walking out on a limb. And you learn more from your failures than your success. So building a culture that doesn't encourage failure, but doesn't penalize it overly, and so gives people an opportunity to try something new. And then also give people an individual growth path so they don't feel like they're stagnant. And if you do those things, people stick with you for a long, long time, which is really a valuable thing.
A lot of great and valuable ideas how to build a team, like you say, how to help the team grow. When you think of the whole list of skills that are necessary for a leader, to run this well. Do you think there is one that stands out in particular, one where you feel like this is the skill or this is the tool that I go back to all the time? If things don't work, this is my tool that will reset, that will help us get back to a positive footing.
Well, the demands are different at each level of engagement. And as a senior tech leader, I find that adoption curves are useful. Gaining an intuitive sense of when a technology is ready to be used or not is very important. And some of that comes with experience. It's kind of hard to teach that. There is so much hype in the IT world. It's been that way from the very beginning. Everybody's always pursuing the next biggest thing. Some of it is ready, some of it's not. But as a leader within an organization, it undermines my credibility if I take a half-baked technology and build something on it. So I have to be very careful that I bring technologies in that only add value. And while that great language may be really super cool, it's not necessarily going to create something that I can maintain in 10 years or 5 years or 20 years. And seeing the life cycle, understanding the software development life cycle is critical, I think, in IT. Understanding the adoption curve, understanding the composition of teams and how to develop teams, and how to make teams work more closely together, and how to interoperate teams. How to build a productive relationship between the business and the customers and your IT department. That's mostly occupied a lot of my last 10 years. I would say is building that collaborative relationship and adopting agile processes on a more organization-wide basis, not just within IT. It's not a lot. It's not one big thing, Joseph. It's getting all those little things right, I would say.
But it sounds like some big chunks that are there, right? I hear you talk a lot about the focus on the team, assembling the right team, developing the team, and then the relationship to the business or the connection between the technical side and the business side. Let's shift gear for a moment. I'd love to talk to you about some of the advice that you received from others. I imagine, like many, you've had some trusted advisors in your journey. You had some mentors. You had some people who gave you good advice. I'd be curious, what were some highlight pieces of advice that you got from others? And maybe even some pieces where at first you thought, this doesn't make sense. This must be wrong. And I'm definitely going to ignore this. And then later it turned out to be not so bad after all.
I've been notoriously poor in networking in my career, so a lot of the things I've had to figure out on my own. I have gotten a lot of advice on the business side than the IT side. I think early in my career, though, I received a lot of valuable guidance and mentorship around concepts of continuous improvement for myself and the people I work with, and encouraging that, building an environment that's conducive to that. I received a lot of valuable advice around the idea that people matter. I think as technologists, we have a tendency to overlook the value that people bring. We think computers can interchange with people. We kind of like to think so. It's kind of a conceit we have. People matter at every step. And when we ignore that, we endanger everything, all the work we're doing. And so while I'm not a soft, squishy kind of girl that's constantly, encouraging, just a complete people focus, I don't try to remove people from things pointlessly. I don't try to automate out everything. Keeping people in the loop sometimes is valuable. There's good reasons to automate as much as you can, but there are also good reasons to keep people in as a control.
That's a great observation.
As fast as an automated solution can make a mistake in industrial scale.
That's a great observation, right? I think we're tempted at the moment again to look for that replacement of people with AI. And my sense, it was also very strong at the early days in the pandemic, where there also was really a surgence of technical solutions and cutting the human side.
We've had this every 5 to 10 years throughout my career is this
Yeah.
sense that, oh, we can finally get rid of people
Yeah.
now. But I don't know. People are definitely hard to obsolete.
Yeah. I like that.
I think some of the bad advice I received, it's first blush, it's good advice, which is focus on your core, the core of whatever you're doing.
Okay.
I think it's more of a recipe for stagnation because I think we grow by doing things
Mm.
that make us uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
I've learned that when, studying psychology, that in human development, that is where growth does come from approaching the uncomfortable
Okay.
and making it comfortable.
Okay.
So I think organizations need to do that. IT departments need to do that. Is to constantly strive to do something outside the box, and to encourage that kind of lateral thinking, that sort of new approach to solving problems. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not going to dismiss AI. It's a huge thing. I mean, it's a big inflection point for IT. But honestly, I don't know if we really know how to use it. I think we need to
Mm.
really selectively use specific use cases and find real value that AI adds,
Yeah.
rather than just try to throw it against the wall and see what
Yeah.
sticks.
Yeah.
But that's true with every IT change that we've had. When the internet came up in the late 90s and aughts, it was the same kind of, game changer.
Yeah.
And when RDBMSs came up in the 90s, it was a big game changer. We've had these kind of changes throughout, in cloud services in the early aughts. Every one of these has set an environment for rapid innovation, but initially it's not been quite clear what the value is.
Yeah. Yeah. I like this idea of going away from the core, getting uncomfortable. And it brings up the question for me, what is that for you at the moment, Rebecca? So when I take a look at where you are at the moment, and I don't mean this in terms of organization or title or so, but again in terms of your leadership journey, what is something that you're working on at the moment? What is something where you feel like there is growth, there's possible growth at the moment?
Well, there's one of the reasons I got into IT is I'm a very introverted person. And so my personal journey is about flipping that on its head, becoming much more of an outgoing person. I realized at the end of the day, some time ago, that all problems are root people problems.
Mm-hmm.
Every problem is a people problem. We like to dress it and other things, but it's a people problem. I just finished getting a degree as a psychotherapist so I could better understand people. And at first you would think that that's the polar opposite of being in IT. IT is all about computers, machines, processes,
Yep.
workflows. No, it's about people. And so a deeper understanding of people has helped progress my IT career pretty dramatically. It's helped me understand why people are motivated, why there's resistance to change, how people function, and how to overcome fear. A lot of our decisions are wrapped around fear or avoidance, and that's a psychological issue. So for my technical career, I continue to try to keep up with technology, but I felt, at least most recently for me, learning more how to deal with people, understand people, and get outside of my little introverted box has been the way I could personally grow. It made me very uncomfortable. I have to admit, it was extraordinarily uncomfortable for me, but I found a lot of personal growth. My career is going to evolve, I believe, towards learning how to better integrate people in with a technological organization so they both advance.
Okay.
I think that we shouldn't necessarily think about how to replace people so much as how to leverage people better so we produce better outcomes. There's no reason an organization should be throwing away talent.
Of course.
But it can make, if you can make talent twice or 3 times as productive with technology, it's a huge upside growth opportunity for the organization.
Yeah.
And so that's really the synthesis of what I'm trying to do, is how to empower and enable people with technology even better. And really that's been the theme of my whole career. I'm just taking it to a different level and a different direction.
It sounds like it. And it's a super unusual combination that you have there with a degree with a background in psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what was the reaction of your environment when you embarked on that?
confusion.
Uh,
Well, I mean, people thought, well, are you planning to leave IT? Do you want to become a full-time therapist?
right,
I have
right.
I have a practice. I see 10 to 15 clients a week, but I see it on my own time and on my own
Wow.
schedule.
Okay. Uh-huh.
But you see, it's understanding people on that level and understanding what makes people work on
Uh-huh.
that level really has been a huge insight into the IT side of my life. So many of our choices are reactionary,
Mm-hmm.
so many of them. Understanding that sequence of events, being able to break it down and being able to know how to teach people to overcome that, has had a huge impact on my working with my user
Yeah.
population within the organization,
Yeah.
working with customers, helping people understand, not feel threatened by technology. And actually, that's something as technologists we're usually rather poor at. And I've been
Mm.
poor. Among any, you walk in the door thinking, I'm going to change the world and make this great technology, and you don't understand all the fear it invokes. You don't understand how people
Yeah.
fear displacement, and that creates resistance, and it
Mm-hmm.
creates needless wasted time and energy. But if you can get people to view it as a collaborative opportunity, not as a
Mm-hmm.
substitution, but as a growth
Mm-hmm.
for everybody, it's uncomfortable, but it's much more
Yeah.
manageable.
Yeah.
And um, that's helped me a great deal lately in my current
Yeah.
employment.
Yeah, that's a really, really neat perspective. And when you mentioned it at first, the psychology that you bring to the conversation, I first thought of your teams, quite frankly. And I appreciate you
Mhm.
talking about customers as well, because of course you can add so much in the relationship
Sure.
with them or into the work that you're doing with them.
Yeah, that's the big difference between
Mm,
CTOs and CIOs is who's the customer. And my current role is
fair
sort of a
enough.
compound role.
Hmm.
Um, and because I marry the duties of a CIO
Yep.
as well as a CTO. Um, so, I mean, it's helpful in both contexts. It's
Yep.
just utilized in a different way.
Yep. Nice. Let me ask you one last question, Rebecca, and
Sure.
then we're going to land the plane. Based on what you see in other tech executives, when you look at peers in other organizations as well, right? So not just your organization, but when you look at other people in similar roles, what do you think they're missing? Is there something that they don't see, but based on your background, it's clear to you? Something that you see all the time, but other people may not be aware of it. Is there
I
something like that?
typically worry a lot more about what I'm missing, Joseph. I
Okay.
try to keep a lot of humility. I think
Hmm.
sometimes we have a tendency not to exercise humility.
Mm.
Uh, and I think that keeping that open mind is sometimes a challenge for all of us, myself included. Uh, Answering issues and questions with curiosity and not
Mm.
conflict. I
Yeah.
think we need to approach others with curiosity more.
Yeah.
Why is this a problem? How long has it been a problem? What did you do before it was a problem? We have a tendency to want to go jump immediately to solutions without understanding the
Hmm.
problem.
Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's a systemic issue in IT, is that we're very quick to give a solution and we're very slow to listen to the people with the problem,
Yeah.
whether that's an internal or an external customer. Um, I'm guilty of that. I've been guilty of that. Going into psychology was an attempt to mitigate that,
Mm.
really,
It's
as much as anything else.
yeah. It's so tempting to come with an answer, to come with a solution, instead of
Uh,
with ignorance and
if you have a
curiosity.
hammer,
Mm.
everything is a nail,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's a tendency we need to avoid.
Yeah. Rebecca, this has been a real pleasure. A couple of things that will stick with me for a long, long time. Once these 5-year cycles of trying to make people obsolete and not to do that. And the really, really unique combination that you have achieved in your journey. It's a real
Well, thank you.
encouragement for other people out there to really look for that, right? Not to look for something that's adjacent in what can be done, but for something maybe that's far away. And you say it's almost the opposite that you have.
There's so much growth comes from trying to combine two different things that seemingly have nothing in common.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of innovation comes from. So this is my attempt to grow out of my own limitations. So
awesome. Thank you for bringing that to the conversation here, Rebecca.
Well, thank you, Joseph. To
everyone else out there, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment on our videos. And most importantly, join us again for our next episode of the Top Innovator series. And until then, keep your brain cells active.